We are Heather and Paul Christie.
And for over 12 years, we've worked with executives and entrepreneurs to accelerate change in every aspect of their business.
Because we are in the fastest paced business environment that anyone has ever seen before.
So join us for the Evolve to Win show. Hi, and welcome to another Evolve to Win show with Heather and Paul. Hey, how are you, Heather?
I'm doing great today.
First of all, I want to congratulate Heather and her team for making it to sectionals, USTA tennis sectionals, and taking second place in your flight. You guys did really well.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch too.
It was a lot of fun being there. We have this was the first time that this team had even played together, and we won our our county for our county.
Yeah.
And then that allowed us to go play for the state championship in Florida, and we beat 2 out of the 3 teams, swept them actually, but that first team, Miami-Dade, they were just way too tough. Nobody could beat them. So but
it came down to one tiebreaker.
It did. It was one super tiebreaker in one match that determined whether we would have advanced.
That's what happens in tough competition is that it always comes down to that
critical moment.
Right. Just like, who has it and who doesn't at that time. So
that's right. But it was fun.
It was good.
Thanks for cheering us on. Today, we want to talk to you about goal setting and 2019 goals, how you make them easy, make them simple.
And easy.
Quick and easy. Because I think what happens, we're already in December as of the taping of this show, right?
Yep.
And most of you should already be really, really clear on what you're up to in 2019. And if you're not, there's a great opportunity here to get that kind of clarity. Or if you've already gone through, several renditions of a strategic planning process, which many companies do, and your goals are sort of big and complex and confusing, you might want to just tune in and really look at how can you simplify those in a way to communicate them.
I know. And one of the things is that as we've fine-tune our strategic planning process, we have gathered other people's market research, right? We've
a lot of market research.
We've bought other people's programs to find out what works and what doesn't work, what we like the best and what we, decided not to use in it. But what we find is that a lot of, at least for us, a lot of, people who create these programs make them way complicated and take way too much time. We like things that are really fast, quick, easy, to the point, and get you going, so that what's the most important is not only the strategic planning, the sitting down and taking the time to do that, but having an action plan that really gets you excited and motivated to move into that first quarter.
Yeah, and I think what happens when you have a plan that's too complex, or even a process that's too complex, you not only lose the clarity at the top level of the organization, you have no chance of clarity at the other levels of the organization.
Yeah, that's right.
If the executive leadership team doesn't really understand what's going on.
Yeah, you have to be able to communicate that as well. So it's got to be simple. If it has all of these different branches of things that are going on and action plans it's just way too complicated. So we want to
If it requires an entire binder, you might want to rethink it. Your plan should be able to be, created on one page very simply. I just wanted to cite to this study because I think this is really valuable to know. So TTI and HR.com got together and they studied over 550 companies in February and March of this year to really try to understand the state of employee teams in 2018.
Okay.
So hugely valuable study with lots of great information. But one of the things that stood out for me about this study is when these companies were asked the question, which of the 4 following characteristics do you consider to be most important for team effectiveness? So these are the characteristics that are most important for team effectiveness. Number 1 came in as good communication at 78%. Number 2 came in at clear goals, 72%.
Yeah.
So you think about that. Now, I can't even argue with these results. I want to because I think, well, you've absolutely got to have clear goals as a starting point. Yet if you suck at communication, it doesn't matter how clear your goals are if you can't communicate them. So I won't argue this.
So do you know how many companies there are out there that really do not have goals? Yeah. And if they do, maybe the partners have put it together, or the owner of the company has put it together, thought about it, taken some time.
Here's what we're going to do. Right?
But then tries to communicate it or doesn't communicate what they've come up with.
Or why.
And the why, right? And if they don't communicate it effectively, how does it trickle down to?
Well, what happens is you don't get buy-in, and therefore you don't get execution, and then you don't get the results.
Yeah.
So that typically doesn't work. So if you've ever been in a company before that actually has a goal-setting process but fails on the execution side, I want to recommend a book. And this is a book that we only came across because a client was using it and asked us to read it a couple of years ago. And it's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And that's by Covey and McChesney, Chris McChesney. So look that up, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. For short, they call it 4DX. And there's actually some great videos out there on YouTube as well. So if you search that on YouTube, you can get a really good idea in about 5 minutes time, the process that they use. And it really is a very clear and simple process. And we don't use it in its entirety, but we've definitely taken a lot of the points that they use because they're very powerful. And one of the primary things that they're great at, and this is really going to be the focus of how to create those clear and simple goals, is how to create the most important goal. In 4 Disciplines of Execution, they call it wildly important goal. And
The one.
So by the way, one goal per organization. And if you think about this, if the organization has one goal, then every single team within the organization has their own wildly important goal that supports the overall organizational goal. Now, some of you are thinking right now, ooh, that's never happened in my office before where we've just had one goal.
Mm-hmm.
And some of you might even be thinking, my company doesn't set goals, so I'm not sure how this fits with me. And we'll talk about that as well. Because even if your company doesn't have a clear goal, every single one of you should have your own clear path for your own professional growth within your company. And then, your own personal goal too, for your personal growth. So I look at it as having at least, 2 different types of goals, one professional, one personal. And if you could create it like the most important goal, here's the question that 4 Disciplines of Execution uses that I think is a really, really great question to frame this wildly important goal.
Okay.
Here it is. If every other area of our operation remained at its current level of performance, what is the one area where change would have the greatest impact? So think about that. So when you think about the organization and the current level of performance, they call that, the day-to-day ins and outs, they call that the whirlwind. And I like that as kind of a visual. It looks different for different companies, but it really is a whirlwind of activity. We're so busy these days just executing our day-to-day operations that oftentimes when a goal is set up or given to us, no one has the time to do this new thing.
Because they're in the whirlwind.
Because they're stuck in the whirlwind.
Which is not a bad thing. It's actually executing on just delivering your product or service or marketing it or selling it or whatever. It's the whirlwind.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's never going away. So just be really clear that your day-to-day job is always going to be there. And so when you set that goal, if you're setting 3 or 4 or 5 goals, I've literally seen companies with 10 goals. And I'm like, are you going to get any of them done?
It's never going to happen.
It's not going to happen. So think about just that one thing. If everything else stayed at its current level of operation, what's the one thing that would have the greatest impact?
Mm-hmm.
So Paul and I did, we've done a couple of planning sessions already in the end of the year here. We just got together with our CPA firm. We have this HBK is our CPA firm locally here. And we do this monthly financial planning with them. Well, we pulled them in to do our year-end planning so that they could get really much more engaged with us in creating that financial forecast, creating our assumptions. If you're not at that level yet, because maybe you don't have the resources internally, you should really consider whether there's an external resource that could help you start to pull together that budget for 2019. Your budget really should be finalized by now. But if it's not, you've still got some time, so get to work. And if you don't have the resources to do it internally or you just haven't been successful, pull in somebody from the outside where that's their expertise. So you have that conversation. You say, here's what we're looking at doing. Here's our current operation. Here's what we expect. Here's all the clients that we have now. Here are the new clients we expect to bring on.
Mm-hmm.
And here's our wildly important goal. And so we gave all of our assumptions about what that wildly important goal is. For us, it happens to be a new membership site, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a very specific niche market, serving a great value.
The one
they're
thing.
serving a great need, but it's just one thing. Now that one thing is going to take a lot of different resources. It's going to take a lot in financial resources. We have a lot of different employees we'll need to pull in to help build the technology that's going to support it. But when you think about it, if we were focused on 2 or 3 different things, we'd execute nothing well. So by focusing on just that one, now we can get laser focused on who does what by when, what resources we need to pull in, and we've been able to account financially for what is this going to cost, what would we expect in income, and really kind of put that forward.
And it just allows us to be able to focus on one thing at a time, because it's so difficult having so many different goals, especially if they aren't aligned properly with each other, and they're taking you in different directions. They can become a major distraction, which ends up, and a lot of times, not being able to complete either of them.
Right. And so when you think about this goal, so we've got this overall organizational goal. And again, if you're just tuning in, the question you ask is, if every other area of our organizational performance remains the same, what is the one change that would make the biggest impact in our company? So when you think about that and you've chosen that, you come up with a number of different ideas. Rather than just as the owner of the company creating this by yourself, you really want to consider bringing people in throughout your team, because if they haven't had a say in creating it, the chances of them buying into it go way down, right? So as you're thinking about, okay, here's a handful of different things that would make a big impact this year, how do you determine which one to go after? It's not always the one that you think is going to make the most money. I mean, that certainly should be one of your criteria you look at, but you want to look at the big picture, which of the goals really can get a number of team members involved and get behind it. When you think about your bigger purpose within your organization, which one is really going to continue to move you forward? Making sure too that wildly important goal is truly measurable, because if you don't have a great way to measure it, you're never going to know if you've actually gotten it.
Yeah, and so we have a client of ours. We did a quarterly planning session with them just last month, and one of their goals, their big goal for 2019, is really systemizing their business for efficiency. So what they need is some technology to really start to leverage some of the things that they do in their business. It's a very complicated business. And so they are looking at a CRM and a project management system. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. There's a lot of work of getting it installed and put in and getting people to conform and to start to use the new tool. So that's a big deal. That one thing is enough for the year to take on, because if they get that right, that is going to be a massive game changer for them going into the next 5-10 years.
And you think about the why behind that in their particular situation. That one, by the way, is a great example.
Yeah.
In their situation, it is going to really, really shift their ability to communicate with each other. So it'll reduce some of the tension that happens when miscommunication happens. When they start to have a software, a technology that gives them leverage, they're going to be able to really understand better, just how projects move forward and what piece relies on the next piece. And look, with every organization, you're in a different place. You're, at different sizes. And a lot of times what got you here won't get you there. So it's a lot to bite off to think about taking on a whole new technology, because it's not the decision about the technology that's the hardest part. It may seem like that initially, but the technology is only a tool. It's how well you use that tool. It's how you train the team and how you communicate that and how you begin to adopt that and create it like a habit. That's the tough part. So they're in for a huge challenge this year. And it really is going to be all hands on deck in that entire company for how they get behind this tool. So it's going to be great to watch their progress and see the kind of differences it makes. There's this term called the sigmoid curve, which is what happens when change is taking place in an organization, which, by the way, is always, if you're in growth mode, where they say it gets worse before it gets better. So this is the other thing to really consider, is that whatever change you're after this year, it's tough at first, because in reality, what we're really doing is we're changing habits. Any kind of change requires a change of thinking. It requires a change of activity. So just know that it's going to be tough in the beginning, but there's going to come a time where you'll feel that relief when you start to get that momentum. So the sigmoid curve, like that.
Got it. So let's recap. We talked about the 4 disciplines of execution, and it's been posted on.
Yeah, thanks. Karan posted it. The 4 disciplines.
So the 4 disciplines of execution. It's a book, and you can also go on YouTube, and there's some videos, short videos on there that kind of explain the whole process, which I highly recommend for you to take a look at. Just check it out on YouTube. But what we were talking about is that wildly important goal, which is what they call a WIG. And really, because a lot of people will have many, many goals and then try to complete all those in the first quarter. They may not have the action plans. It's confusing. It's convoluted. Sticking to one goal. You can just take on one thing for 2019. Maybe you get it done in the first quarter or the second quarter, and that's great. Then you can go back and you can figure out what another one is going to be. But that's the first step. And then what's the second step?
Well, once you have that wildly important goal identified and you really understand why it's so important in your organization, just making sure that that communication happens all throughout the organization, making sure that it's really clear, that it's very specific, that it's measurable, and make sure it's really created to be a result, right? It's not just activity. It's not just what you're doing. It's what are you looking to achieve? Well, ultimately, you're going to be tying action items to that wildly important goal. And our recommendation always is to chunk it down. You know, if you think about a huge goal that you have for the year, it can seem incredibly overwhelming. So you want to break it down at least by quarter. Once you've got your first quarter goal that supports you in achieving that wildly important goal, then you can break that down even further. So I know exactly what I need to do in Q1. What do I need to do this month? And when you know what you need to do this month, what do I need to do this week, all the way down to what do I have to do today? And it's really chunking it down, because the killer of execution is the whirlwind, right? So it's the day-to-day work. Everyone is overly busy these days. So we actually have to set some time aside on a daily basis, even if it's only 20 or 30 minutes, to focus on that goal, focus on what's new that you're bringing into the organization.
And next week, we are going to discuss daily huddles. So that's really the next step, is once you do your planning, to install this daily huddle into your team to make sure that everybody stays on task. If there's any help that needs to be given to anyone, it keeps everybody up to date. It's all about communication. And we're going to tell you how that works and the benefits. Maybe
we'll do our daily huddle live.
Yeah, we can do that.
Oh my God, would that be a blast? We'll spare you from that, but we'll tell you how we do it anyway. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a great day. If you haven't connected with us yet, please go to heatherchristie.com and sign up for our leadership list, or you can always find us on YouTube. Just search Heather Christie. I'm the one who's not the rock star.
Thanks for watching. Have a great day.